Good morning, everyone. Before I begin my speech, first let me ask you some questions. How many of you here pay attention to the clothes that you're wearing? Even if you say no, I bet you still check on your outfit before stepping out of the house to make sure you look decent and proper. But how many of you here actually pay attention to what your clothes are made of and where they come from? Some of you here might think, why bother, right? It's just clothes. As long as it fits you and you look good in it, then you're good to go. Well, believe me, I have been in that phase until one day I realized that I've been taking parts of damaging the planet just by simply buying clothes. I found out that my wardrobes were filled with brand names such as H&M, Zara, and Uniqlo, or also known as fast fashion brands nowadays. Every one of you here might also be familiar with those brand names. You might also purchase one of the things from those brands, or if you're like me in the past, you must have your closet filled with those brands only. I get it. These brands are famous, they're trendy, and most importantly, they're cheap. But what if I told you that there is so much higher cost that comes behind those retailers' price tags in terms of environmental and social costs? And what if I also told you that we actually have the power to change that? And the power is exactly what we wear. So today, I will talk about first the environmental and social costs of fast fashion. Second, I will tell you how to shop for ethical and sustainable fashion. And then finally, I will tell you the impact that you will make to the world if you shop for ethical and sustainable fashion. In recent years, the fast fashion industry has received abundance of criticisms for its limited consideration in terms of environmental and social values. According to an article titled "The Environmental Price of Fast Fashion," the clothing production is estimated to be 62 million tons per year, and that number is expected to be doubled by 2030. So now, the fast fashion brands are producing almost twice the amount of clothing compared to the early 2000s using the cheapest materials possible in the fastest way of production. And as the result of this cheap manufacturing production, the clothing production, the polyester fabrics such as nylons has dominated the textile production. So for those of you who don't know what polyester is, so polyester is a type of fabrics which is made of plastic and fossil fuels. And you might not realize this, but half of our clothes are actually made of polyester. And why is that an issue? So let's take a look. So first, polyester is very hard to biodegrade. It takes about 20 to 2,000 years to biodegrade in the landfills. So a century from now, an archaeologist might be doing some observation or some research, and they might find a piece of Zara in the landfills. And think about the increase of clothing production that is estimated to be 2% every year, which means more plastic is polluting the planet, and that is not going away. Secondly, the polyester, since once again is made of plastic, the microplastic contained in it are shedding when you wash the clothes. And when they enter our water system, it could end up in the sea, the fresh water, and elsewhere, including the deepest part of the oceans and the highest glacier peaks. It could also be in the water that we drink every day. And in addition to that, in 2019, Some scientists from the Arctic has discovered abundance of microplastic particles in the air. Imagine, it is in the air that we breathe every day. So what happened is that the snow captures the microplastic particles, and when it falls on the samples, turns out the ice contained a very high concentration of microplastics. Later, also in 2019, a study also showed that people eat at least 50,000 particles of microplastics per year. And at the end of our lives, we might also be a human plastic without even going under the knife. No, but seriously, when you absorb those particles, the microplastic particles, and when it gets into your lungs, there is a high possibility of causing a lung cancer. Another problem with the fast fashion industry is this high carbon emission. Often, each step of production occurs in a different part of the country, in a different country in the world. So, for example, the textile production as well as the manufacturing process mostly occurs in the global north countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, Pakistan, and Indonesia. Whereas the design process is done in the global south, such as Europe and the USA. And when the manufacturing process is done, the clothing is shipped in the large quantities to the central distribution center, which is in the Europe, UK, and the USA. And then it got shipped again to the smaller retailers where the clothing were purchased, namely Asia like Singapore, Japan, and Indonesia. That series of production process causes so much unnecessary footprint and waste. That's why the fashion industry is in fact responsible for 8% of global carbon emissions. And as for the textile industry itself, so like I mentioned before, the textile occurs mostly in Asia and it happens in China. They use coal as their energy supply, or also known as the world's dirtiest form of energy. That is why the textile industry is responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions. So now we know that we're making too much clothes using the environmentally destructing materials through a high carbon emission process. And if we're talking about the social cost of this unjust system of the industry, we should also talk about the people who made our clothes, right? Like I mentioned before, the manufacturing process occurs mostly in the developing countries in Asia, and one of them is Bangladesh. 2013, on the 24th of April, the world was shocked by the horrific news of the collapsing of Rana Plaza. So Rana Plaza is the place for more than 20 manufacturing buildings for some brand names in Bangladesh. In this incident, there are at least 1,000 people died and some more were injured. And then what happened after that? So the fast fashion companies just build new manufacturing buildings, recruit new workers, paying them in low wages without healthcare coverage, and forcing them to continuously work for 14 to 16 hours a day. When I began researching for this fast fashion and their environmental and social cost, my way of thinking was very much affected by it, to the point where I realized that using stainless straw and eco bags for shopping done too much for our environment. and how we gradually start to feel that the environmental destruction is getting closer and closer to us. And I just saw how big of problems that we have to face because of human irresponsibility. And you might also be as frustrated as I am as to what we should do to stop this massive destruction. And the solution is to shop for ethical and sustainable fashion. And here are some things that you can do to be fully aware of your clothes and to what you're wearing. So first, you should check the tag when you shop and understand where your clothes came from and what they're made of. If they came from companies or brands that don't value their workers, their community, and made of fabrics or materials that are environmentally destructing like polyester or nylons, stop looking and don't buy it. Second, you should check the materials and seams of the clothing. If you see the seams are already coming apart and you notice that the materials is easily ripped off, don't buy it. You should buy clothes that are going to be last for a long time. And then third, or finally, you should buy something that you really love. So the clothing will be worn more, meaning you will be buying less clothing. There are actually many other fun ways for shopping sustainable and ethical fashion, and one of them is to do a thrift shopping. So for example, rather than buying clothes from retail stores, you should buy clothes from thrift stores. Because when you're thrift shopping, it means you're recycling someone's old into your new. And recycling clothes meaning you are supporting the sustainable fashion. And then there is also this campaign by, especially in Indonesia, by Zero Waste Indonesia, called Tukar Baju. So in this event, people are basically exchanging clothes. So you bring some of your clothes to the event to be displayed, to be put in the rack, and then people get to see your clothes, and you also get to bring home some clothes that you like that are brought by other people like you, in the same amount of clothes that you bring. I think this activity, this event is very fun because you get the thrill of shopping for free new clothes when in fact you're just bartering clothes with other people. As you can see that it isn't that difficult to be fully aware of your clothes and to support sustainable and ethical fashion. Instead, it is fun and it's worth giving a try. Now, let's take a look to the impact that you will make to the world if you start to shop for sustainable and ethical fashion. So, when you start to shop for sustainable and ethical fashion, you're also helping to tackle down this chaotic, polluting, and unjust system of the fashion industry. Sustainable fashion helps in reducing the carbon footprint and the textile waste of fashion industry. And when you buy less clothing, it means you're also reducing the water consumption of the fashion industry. Also, the type of society that you want to be realized on this world can be created through buying clothes that are really value their communities and take their commitment seriously. So as you can easily see that every time we shop, we're actually voting with our wallets. It all comes back to us, to consumers, because we hold the powers. If we choose to look behind the brands and to buy clothes that have a positive impact on the people and on the planet, we can change the industry because they're just following what we're doing. And if all this time we have been using our money to support the industry to be this massive and chaotic like now, we can as well use our money to stop the environmental destruction, to help people, and to clean up our planet.